To be able to work with my character, I want the images that I pulled together. I made that character sheet last week, but then I sliced it up into a couple different pieces just by exporting the different clips so I can get a front and side view, and I'll be using that for my reference. So in the scene, what I want to do is jump into my front view by going to my -Y. I'm going to have Shift A, and I want to go to Image, Reference, and that'll start by bringing in, I believe it is Slice 2, but I can look at these as by clicking on this little icons. So let's load that. It's currently going to be named Empty. I want to F2 and name that Front Ref. Now I can bring this up into place. I want to set it on the stage, and I have a couple settings in here too. This is my image settings, and I can decide if it's in the front or the back. I want it to be in the back, and I can decide if I want to view it from the front or the back. And I'm going to set it to front here because that means if I'm behind it, nothing shows up. So in this view, I just want to make sure that the character is sort of on the stage and relatively centered. So this is pretty good, and I like it where it is now, but I'm going to hit, with it selected, G and drag it back just in the Y-axis because it'll still be here in orthographic and it'll be out of my way here. Now I'm going to go into my side view and do the same thing. I'm going to do Shift A, Image, Reference, and this time I'm going to choose my side view. Since I've sliced these together, I don't need to worry about the proportions of them. I don't need to worry about them being differently sized from each other because they both came from the same document. So now I have both of these, and I want to make sure that these are visible but not selectable. So up in this filter, I'm going to click this little arrow, and that means that if I select an object, front ref, and let's rename this empty, of course, as side ref, now I can click this one as well, and they're both on, but they're no longer selectable. You can get rid of this light and this camera as well. I don't need you right now. I'm not sure what that is, but I don't need it. So now I've got this here, and I've got my reference images. If I go here, I'm looking at this image, and if I go here, I'm looking at this image. That's going to be really handy for me. And we can see that it actually shows up in the different shaded modes, even in flat shaded mode, because it's a reference image. So I'm going to drop in a cube, and I want to be working in symmetry. I also have, as you can see, if I look in the front view, I can't see it right now, but if I turn on X-ray view mode, which is Alt or Option Z, I'm able to see through the character, which means I'll be able to help line things up. I also want to make sure as I'm modeling, I leave my PureF board open. I sort of crop the size and shrink it down. And I leave it up to looking at my character so that I can get a sense of my overall proportions. So I can make sure as I'm making my model, it feels like it's fitting the character just right. So I'm going to delete half this cube, this little half here. So let's say B, drag over to delete all of these, X, faces, and then let's set this to mirror. Now, I'm going to be doing it for my character here, but these steps are the same. So A, S, Y to sort of shrink it down. These steps will be the same for pretty much any character. What I'm trying to give you is a formula for creating a decent base mesh without a lot of years of character modeling experience. This is going to be the start of my torso, and the limbs will come out from there. So I'm going to start by kind of shrinking it down, and I want it to start and stop right about at the groin, and then let's hit B. Whenever I'm doing this, I don't want to hit just 2 and hit like an edge and drag up because I'm going to miss stuff. Nor do I want to just click one of these. So you'll see me hit the B key a lot to drag over. That way I know I'm getting everything in the front and the back. So now I'm grabbing right about where the shoulder should start. And we're getting the idea of the hips to these shoulders. Most people, again, depending on the character, you might have wider hips, narrower shoulders, narrower hips. This character seems relatively like hips and shoulders are pretty even. I'm going to hit Shift R, and I'm going to put in 4 divisions right here. So 1, 2, 3 to give me 4 divisions up here. And this is going to become the basis for my character. From a side view, I'm going to pop over here, and I can see this isn't quite right. So let's start using these. G, and I'm going to set S to scale, R to rotate, and I'm creating the top of my body. This is going to be the bottom, and so I'm going to again hit S. And so even though you can see like the leg is here, I'm actually imagining what's happening between the legs. So it narrows and it tapers in. But also remember we said that spine is not straight, it's curved. So as we bring these features in, and I'm now going to scale only in the y-axis because I know where things are in my other axes. And I can start to bring this in, do the same thing here, B, G, pull this back because this is going to be sort of the back of the spine. I'm in my tweak mode, but I guess I can just leave it in select box mode. It seems to be what's going to work best for me here. So what I'm trying to do is get this to line up with the curvature because I'm trying to create an overall bean torso shape. Did look like I forgot to put clipping on. If you did that like me, it's not that bad. You just hit it and you can go back and drag these back into the center to make sure they're all lined up with each other. Probably should have had clipping on, but you know, it's not the worst thing that's ever happened. This in the front should be our groin. A big mistake people make is they feel like the legs need to come out from here, something like this. And the problem with that is it doesn't give any space for deformation, doesn't give any space for the groin, it's not anatomically correct. It just doesn't fit the character design. It doesn't give enough room, like I said, for the legs to come into play. So we're going to do something similar, just following overall our proportion guides. And this is a case where you can see my front and side view don't really line up. So I have to make some choices and decide which of these I really want to follow in some of these cases. So you're often going to go back and forth a lot. I feel like my side view, I've got what I need for my front view, and I feel like my side view is giving me a little bit more information. So we can see this is an overall bean shape, and what I can do now is I'm going to add a subdivision surface modifier. Let's give it like 2 divisions, and I can see the torso starting to come out of it. We're going to click this little button, which means it's not going to be visible in edit mode, because we don't want it to be in edit mode right now. We want to build some more features off of it. Now that I've got this, I want to start getting the neck. So I'm going to hit 3 and I, and make sure I hit B. Now remember, if when you hit B, nothing happens in here, make sure you don't have anything on the inside here. Like there's no extra face in here when you're on 3 mode. We shouldn't see one in there. Otherwise, that'll make it impossible to do this kind of inset. When I've got this, I can hit G to lift it a little bit, maybe edit its size and shape, because it should be overall pretty square. And this will be the basis of my neck. We'll leave this right here for now, and in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to delete these faces, because when there's an open face, subdivision just rounds the whole thing out. And I'm going to soften this up a little bit by moving these two. So I'm going to move this edge on the side back, and this edge on the side back here, because I'm creating like a cylinder, as you can see. And then this needs to come closer to the center because it's too wide for my neck right now. But you can see this is the shape it's giving me, because I'm trying to like work with lower resolution, because whatever I'm going to do is going to get subdivided later anyway. Okay, let's do the arms now. Let's build out the basis of arms. We're not going to do the whole arm, just the start. And I'm not going to go straight out. Again, a lot of modeling tools and tips you'll see, they'll just take the arm and they'll just come straight out like this and bring it in. There's some real reasons we don't. And the anatomy, the topology I'm not making right now isn't going to be perfect. It's not going to be the best in the world, but it's the best topology for the easiest, fewest steps that I can possibly give anyone. I've been teaching people how to model characters for a long time, and I find this method works pretty well. So what I'm going to do instead is extrude this, and this is the shoulder. The arm is actually going to come out of here. In order to do that, we need to shift some things around. So I'm going to select these and kind of soften those. I'm going to select these and pull these up. And so we start to see G and sort of shift it back. We're creating like a shoulder girdle kind of thing, because we need our topology to flow in a certain direction. And we're going to talk a lot about topology and edge flow, but basically if I create a line, it's going to run through here, which is perfect. That's exactly the kind of thing that we want. I'm going to pull these back a little bit in towards the body. And then this is almost like this little square right here. This quad is our shoulder. Now I'm going to take this shape and I'm going to pull this out. G, rotate it. Now this is the shape that's going to be the start of my arm, which is great, but it's not quite the right shape, as you can see. It's not squared up enough. We can use a tool called the loop tools, and we're going to use that a lot for this. So under add-ons, we're looking for loop tools and make sure that's turned on. And so what a loop tool let me do, if I select this and I right click and I go to loop tools, I can select circle, and it's actually going to not make it a circle because it's a square, but it does let me get at least the shape that I want. So I'm going to start about here and I'm going to scale it down. And this is going to be the basis of my arm. Something like that. Great. Now the reason I like squares is because, check it out, if this square is empty and it's like a perfect square, it makes a nice circle. And so we'll work with this as well, but I'll leave this, for now, I'll leave this as an open hole. And maybe I'll give it a little bit more distance here just to kind of round out that shape. Great, but you can see too the extra additions I made. This is the kind of thing I want. The edge flow is forcing it to turn into a shoulder. Often when you get your topology wrong, you're fighting the shape it wants to be. But by following this approach, it's the shape it wants to be. And so it wants to create like a nice popped up shoulder here, which is what we're looking for. Let's do the same thing down here. Now, of course, I've got lots of nice space. And this is going to be weird because there's no butt yet, but we'll make one. So let's say E. And I can do this a couple ways. I'm going to move it out. I'm going to hit G, and I'm going to rotate it until it's relatively flat. And then I'm going to show you a trick I like to do to get this nice and straightened out. I'm going to say S, Z, and 0, and it flattens it for me. Same thing down here, though. Of course, if I'm looking at this from this bottom Z, I need to right-click, Loop Tools, and Circle. Let's turn off on mirror clipping really quick, because otherwise, if I leave clipping on and I try to fix these, oh, it actually works fine. Well, sometimes it doesn't. And in those cases, like if you're ever worrying about like it's going over the sides and you want to turn it off, just turn clipping off for a second. And then I'm going to say S of X, because the legs aren't perfectly straight. Ooh, actually, wow, I did that wrong. If you do what I did here, let's just rotate it around the other way. So that was the problem. The whole thing is, let's say R, Z. There we go. So still trying to get the, relatively square. So let's S, Y, S, X. And then I can go ahead and I can delete these. So that's not bad. I mean, like you said, the cool thing about this is we have a major shape to everything. And if we want to kind of squish things together, S of Y, you can see the more we taper the shape and we help it, it's going to create the roundness that we're looking for in some of these spots. But this is a pretty good start for this, and we're going to keep building out now the other parts of the body. Let's work our way down. I like to stay in this low resolution. You'll see a lot of people will apply the mirror and subdivision modifier by now. I don't. I'm leaving it here until I absolutely need it. So let's go with the legs, and we're going to go straight down. We're going to taper those in, and we're going to kind of line them up with the tops of our feet, like so. So something like this, that's looking pretty good. And we definitely need to take this as my leg and bring that forward more. And now let's think about where my knee needs to be. So it's going to be about halfway between here and here. And think about where my foot is going to be. I'm going to actually take this chance to fill this hole because I'm going to use it as the basis for the rest of my foot. And we're going to go E to bring it down. And then we're going to say E. And then I'm going to, you want to be careful of making this too wide because I'm looking at the character reference. But the foot, the heel is generally the thinner part. So SX, it comes out a little bit. And I also want to move it out a little bit because I don't want the foot, again, another problem is you don't want your foot pinching in. It's actually very natural for us to stand with our feet slightly splayed out. So I like to model that way. Let's look at it from the bottom. So I can rotate it out and I can hit E and then S of X here. And then to fit the rest of this in, just move things down. And we can round out the top of the foot too by actually scaling in these edges. So we're creating more of a tapering shape here and at the front of the foot. Now, of course, when we do this, it really smooths out everything, which we don't necessarily want. So a trick here is we can actually work with subdivision, select all these edges, and come up to mean crease. It's also Shift E and drag lets you do it, and 1 will punch it in. And when we create a crease, it's going to keep that spot flat for us. So this is going to be pretty nice. Okay, that's a good start. Let's build a little bit with our knee here. So we need to get kind of where our hip is. Let's go into X-ray mode. I'm going to hit N, and Z is cut through for my knife tool. I just drag it at an angle like that. Let's try it again. There we go, and enter. And then I'm going to scale up just this edge. Give me sort of the sense of my shape that goes with my calves. And then I can look at it from a side view. Let's hit 1 and B, because from the front, the calves actually kind of curve back. And back here, they should be out a little bit more. And then here, we want it out a little bit at the front of the leg. And from the front, we can make some adjustments here too. Okay, now I know a lot of this stuff down here is like, wow, that's not really looking great yet, Andrew. I know. We're working towards it. We're gonna get there. But we need more form first. So let's build out now the rest of the arm. We're not gonna do the hands, and we're gonna do the head, and then we'll do some cleanup. And then that'll be pretty much it for this step. So same thing here. I'm just gonna take these edges, and I can extrude the edges and not the faces. I'm gonna hit E and go down to about where I feel like that needs to be. Again, the check is like, relatively speaking, if I'm sort of rotating it, if this comes down to here, it should line up right about with this point, and that looks pretty good. I'm not gonna build out the hand yet, because we're gonna do that ourselves. Whenever I'm rotating too, sometimes I'll look at it straight on, like as flat on as I can, to sort of rotate it along its axis, quote unquote. Let's pull this back a little bit. And as soon as I do that, I see, ooh, I've got a problem. I didn't realize this and this was not the same thing. So I'm gonna go ahead and M at last. Let's take a look at our view and see if we did anything else. I must have accidentally double extruded something. So let's do a quick fix. 1 M by distance, and we can see it removed 3 vertices. If we need to, sometimes you can take it to a 0.01, and it should clean up a lot of stuff that's overlapping. So that's good. I'm glad I caught that, because that could have been a real problem for me. So right now too, with the character, I'm not worrying about like her chest or anything like that. That's not a problem for the anatomy right now. I'm just trying to get main proportions. Let's keep going. Just trying to find spots where things are, but we're going to use a lot of sculpt tools to fix these too. Oh, arm, that's what I'm on. So my elbow, I need to be about halfway up my arm, which, ignoring this, is, let's say, let's get rid of this one, this edge, just so it's not distracting for us. So I want just the edges. So select all the edges, Control X. And now if I add a new edge loop, it should come right in between the two, which it does. Let's rotate it. I'm gonna put another edge loop here. And I know that it should be wider out here and stay relatively thin here. These are things we're gonna work on when we do more specifically anatomy, but Shift S, Shift Z will give me a little scaling just in that direction. Sort of helps me build the arm out. Okay, so we got our base for our model. Let's take a head. Now we're not gonna do the head in here. I'm gonna put the, recreate this face because I'll use it for my extrusion. Now, instead of trying to make my head in here, I'm gonna create a basis for my head. So I extrude, I scale out, I'm gonna move up a little bit, rotate it. I'm just trying to create a rough approximation. A lot of scaling, rotating. You see, I'm kind of filling it in almost like I'm doing some kind of a coloring book or something like that. And then when we get up to here, I'm gonna do I'm gonna try to triangulate all these faces. So I'm actually gonna take my knife tool and go from here to here to here and enter. And I just do this so I can get a little bit of a poke here. Now, very flat head, but that's okay. I could just stretch him out here. This only needs to be an approximation of my head anatomy, because I will be sculpting our heads instead of modeling them. So now that I have this, I have a good basis. Now what I recommend for something like this, again, not doing hands because we're going to model the hands separately in the next video. What we're going to do really quick is go through and I'm going to show you how we can, we're going to clean up a couple areas when it comes to retopology in a video or two. But what I want to do for that is we're going to save this as like low poly base or something like that. I named it this. I could call it char low poly base or something like that, just so I know it's here and I can duplicate it. And I'm going to take this original and I'm going to call this is going to be my character that I'm actually working with. I'll call this Luna. Basically, if I do multiple characters, it saves me a step because I'm always going to come back to this base as like a nice way of starting off the character, because I could turn this base into just about any character. So once you're done with all of that, you're pretty much ready with the base mesh. What's nice about this, and the reason we're creating it, is because we can build on top of it. And we can do a lot of changes and edits to it. But in the next video that I get into when we actually start sculpting features of the body itself, I'll show you how we can clean up a couple other areas so that we can sculpt on top of this and create a nice base mesh. And, you know, it'll make it easier to get our final sculpt. But this is it for this video. And the next one, I'll actually show you how to do the hands, which is, like I said, a whole separate step that we're going to build onto on top of it. So I'll see you in that one.